Episode 6, The First Step. Vereya's ashen skin was stark against the hazy night, its color erased by death. Lotta took cautious, uncertain steps, sleepily following her sister's figure. Vereya's limp hair partially covered her face as she glanced over her shoulder to make sure that Lotta was following her. Lotta wanted to scream, call out to her, ask her to stop, but there was no air. There were no stars in the sky. Her legs grew heavy, clumsy. Her feet sank into the ground as if walking through a swamp. Something was holding her back. Lotta suddenly became afraid that she would not return from the otherworldly darkness. Vereya stopped and looked at her sister. Her lips weren't moving, but Lotta heard a whisper in her ear. Sleep is also death. Vereya walked on, and Lotta had no choice but to follow the path laid by the dead. Vereya stopped in front of the house, stared at the window with a glossy look in her eyes. Sister. The door creaked open. The priest's tall figure appeared on the porch. Why did Vereya bring me here? Get Volit's attention, hide so he doesn't notice you, just watch. Give Volit's attention, let's see. Lotta waved her hand. She stepped a little closer, despite the fact that her heart fluttered in fright next to Volit's imposing figure. Can he see me? You trust the priest and aren't afraid of him in your dreams. Volit walked right through Vereya and then ignored Lotta, headed towards the forest. Vereya floated after him. The dirty hem of her dress was dragging on the ground. Lotta swallowed the bitterness of sorrow, regrets, and overcoming the resistance of sleep, and ran after them. The priest's figure was barely visible through the thickening fog, which seemed to be rising from the ground and slowly spreading around. The sky was overcast with heavy, laden clouds, but not a single star shone even in the patches of clear sky. Lotta followed him, breathless without a will of her own. A quiet but insistent whisper had wormed its way into her thoughts. Follow him. The priest moved smoothly, as if gliding over the ground. His footsteps made no sound. Lotta felt a call, an invisible thread that pulled her deeper into the heart of the forest. The tree branches intertwined, forming an eerie blanket that even blocked the moonlight. Only the fog flickered, and the flicker enveloped everything around, making it seem like reality itself was blurring and melting. The priest kept walking, his figure appearing and disappearing in the thick fog. There were strange sounds around, first distant screams, then the rustle of someone's invisible footsteps. This place has a life of its own. Lotta shivered and turned around warily. Something ancient was watching her with every move, lurking in the depths of the darkness. Suddenly, the priest stopped. The fog parted, revealing a small clearing, illuminated by an unnatural silver light. In the center of the clearing, there was an ancient stone circle, covered in strange symbols. The Alater. Excited, Lotta rushed towards it, but stumbled and fell. She felt neither pain nor the fall itself, and immediately scrambled to her feet, staring at the stone wide-eyed. The priest turned to her, and Lotta saw his face, almost entirely hidden by the skull. Deep, inscrutable eyes reflecting the dark vastness of the forest. Lotta felt an invisible force enveloping her, draining the last remnants of her will out of her. The fog was getting thicker, enveloping her in a dense cloud. The forest sounds grew closer, yet the priest, in contrast, seemed to be getting farther and moving away faster and faster. Lotta reached out to him, but touched Vereya's cheek instead. Her sister's face was right in front of her. A scream caught in her throat. Vereya opened her lips so wide that her jaw ripped open. A harsh, lifeless voice rang out from the gaping black hole where her mouth had once been. Find it! Cryptic. Find what? Lotta woke up drenched in sweat. The first thing she did was look around. Vereya's bed wasn't there. Lotta ran her hand over her face and hunched over the edge of the bed, breathed a sigh of relief. It was a dream after all. But it was Vereya who showed it to me. The Alatar. I thought it was just a legend. It was really out there in the forest. And the priest knows how to find it. She dressed quickly. With a scarf, fine fabrics, fair maiden, flower girl, shepherdess. You know what? I like it, but for once I'm going to change it up. Let's go with fair maiden. I like the color scheme. Kind of matches the hair. Don't worry, I'm sure they're going to, make us change that too. They always do. Plaited hair. That's not too bad. Covered hair with a ribbon. Innocent and modest. Actually, I kind of like the way with the ribbon. Why not? Got the little head thing going. Stop here. She smoothed her dress. A thought crossed her mind. She might have dressed too nicely and felt embarrassed as she imagined people's possible awkward reactions. Usually it was Vera who dressed up. Lotta wore something suitable for grazing sheep and lying on the grass, so that she wouldn't have to worry about ruining expensive fabric. But now she had to interact with people. Maybe Lotta wanted to impress Volet, Ozar, Dragan, Tata, Siren. I don't know. How about that? I don't know. I'll go with Volet. How about that? We'll go with Volet. Tata's nice, Ozar's nice, Dragon, no thank you. Am I wrong? Let me know in the comments. Would his eyes linger on her? Would there be any sign of interest flashing on his face, or would it stay as cold and indifferent as a waxen mask? Her cheeks heated up. She shook her head, banishing those awkward thoughts. Why would I want that? Her knuckles drummed against the wood. There wasn't an immediate response, and Lotta shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot, questions turning over in her mind. Finally, the door opened. Volet paused on the threshold and gave her a sharp, expectant look. Lotta was slightly taken aback and stood there with her mouth slightly open, trying to think of something to say. The priest got impatient and asked tersely, "Why are you here?" Yes, Lotta, why are you here? The priest has sent me. I want you to teach me. I want you to teach me. Volet shut the door in her face. Oh, Jesus. Lotta flinched at the noise and closed her eyes. I shouldn't have been so blunt. But a moment passed, and Volet decided to relent. He opened the door again and stepped aside. Come on in. As soon as she entered, Lotta looked around, as if she could find the stone she'd seen in her dream. Siren was nowhere to be seen, and Lotta didn't ask about her. As usual, it was dark and cool inside the home. So, You want to learn the priest's craft? Yes. And find out what secrets you're hiding. Last night I dreamed of the Alatar. Bolt tilted his head, his eyes boring into her face. So what? You were there. Holding her breath, she watched his reaction, taking in every tiny movement. Sometimes it's better to be honest, sometimes someone else's truth might also come out easier that way. For the first time, she managed to get some kind of reaction from the priest. He looked somewhat surprised. She found confirmation that her dream hadn't been an illusion, that Volot really knew where that stone was. Isn't a ladder just a legend? That's right. He's lying. The father to all stones? I know what they say about it. So what? There's supposed to be a message from the gods written on it. That's what they say. If that's all, let's begin your training. He walked past her, disappearing into another room. Why would he hide that he knows where it is, what's written on it? Lotta smoothed on her red dress once again, and went over to the bench, wanting to sit down but hesitating and returning to the threshold. She felt uncomfortable in the priest's house. Her heart quickened at the realization that she had managed to get involved with those mysterious and dangerous people. Finally, Volot returned dressed in his ritual clothes. He held a bowl in a sack darkened by blood that had soaked into the fabric. Sit down. Lotta sat on the bench. Her hands lay limply on her lap, as she timidly awaited further instructions. She wanted to shrink under his scrutinizing gaze. You might get dirty. Don't come to me looking like... He paused, frowning, choosing his words. You won't be able to wash off the blood, no matter how much you scrub. You'd better change your clothes. I'll be careful. He looked at her outfit one more time, as if trying to fix in his memory how clean her clothes were, and only then he nodded. The priest turned the sack upside down. A hare carcass rolled up to her feet. She stifled a scream, even though it wanted to burst out with a painful spasm. Everything inside her was repulsed by that sight. She was used to taking care of animals, not raising a knife to strike them. A hare's corpse left deep scarlet streaks on the floor. She suppressed her revulsion and asked in a strangled voice, What am I supposed to do? You have to get used to seeing blood. This is a priest's duty. Skin it. The tools are on the table. He put the skull on his head. What about you? She felt like biting her lip when she heard the pleading in her voice. The priest seemed to have heard it too, because he took a moment to answer. Eventually, he said tentatively, almost gently, I'll be right back. Once she was alone, she jumped up and pressed her face against the window. As she watched the figure of the priest move confidently towards the wall of the fog. Once he crossed the border, he didn't stop and moved further on. The mist quickly swallowed his silhouette. Volot disappeared from view. What's out there on that small stretch where the haze still spares the priests? Is he not afraid to go there? His strides were long, his gait confident, as if there were no danger lurking. Why did he go there? She returned to the bench, thinking back to her dream over and over again. I should look for answers next to Volot. Now, Vereya showed me the way for a reason. She looked down, fixing her eyes on the stiffened body of the hare. Skinned the animal. She took a deep breath. I can do this, I can. She went over to the table and picked up the flint knife. It's a blade, sharp but rough, with uneven edges, was speckled with dark spots that could never be washed away. They were the marks of past deeds. She sat down on the floor. She felt more comfortable that way, and for some reason, calmer. She held the carcass over the bowl with unnecessary gentleness. It's already dead. I can't change that. She gripped the hilt so hard that her hands trembled, and then she sighed again. Let's get started. First, she ran the knife along the hare's neck, cutting through the skin. The sharp flint blade sliced smoothly through the animal's body, making a clean cut that became jagged as her hand suddenly twitched with nervousness. Alright, what's next? Lotta took a bone awl, and its thin, sharp end easily pierced through the flesh, helping to separate the skin from the muscle. She slowly pulled off the skin, cutting the tendons and ligaments with a needle to make it easier. Her trembling fingers were sticky, the blood got under her fingernails. When the work was finished, she hurried to put everything in its place and remove any trace of what had happened. Plunging her arms in the water up to her elbows, she caught herself thinking that it turned out to be easier than she expected. I guess I'm really getting used to it. Suddenly, the muffled but no less desperate cry of a child came from behind a closed door. Are there children here? At first, she did nothing. She was a guest. She didn't dare go where she wasn't supposed to. But the screams continued. It sounded as if it was a boy being tortured, cut, skinned, as Lotta had just skinned the hare. What are they doing here? She began to feel uneasy. She stepped closer to the door and pressed her ear to the wood. Besides the child's screams, there was another voice, calm, quiet, a little commanding. Siren? Lotta carefully opened the door in a crack and looked into the gap. Through the flickering candlelight, she saw bunches of dried herbs, strings of dried mushrooms, and amulets woven from twigs and feathers. On dark wooden shelves, there were clay vessels filled with strange tinctures. And in the middle of all the chaos, there was a boy on a table crying and writhing in pain. He was trying to wrench free of his mother's embrace. Tears in her eyes, she was holding him still on the table, not letting him get up. He was kicking his feet, wrapped in worn-out bast shoes, shaking his head, unwilling to swallow a mixture being given to him. He had beads of perspiration on his forehead. His skin had a sickly yellow hue. He was thin, wasted by the disease, his bones sharply sticking out. Siren managed to pour the tincture potion down his throat, but it was so disgusting that the boy immediately curled up into a ball and spat everything out. Let's try again, Aika. But he's sick. Do you want him to give up his soul to the gods? I'm begging you. Open his mouth. Choking back tears, Aika wrenched open her son's mouth. Siren poured the potion down his throat again, then batted his mother's hands away and covered the boy's mouth with her palm so he couldn't spit it out. The child thrashed harder, but Siren held him tightly and didn't let him escape. The boy had no choice but to swallow. He immediately went limp and lost consciousness. His breathing grew slower, more even. His face took on a peaceful expression. What's wrong with him? He's sleeping. Siren held up a candle to him. The weak flame flickered and trembled, but continued burning despite the gusts of wind that came from nowhere. He'll live. She gave the woman several bottles of murky green liquid. Add this to his water every morning and every evening. Make sure he swallows it. Siren wrote something on a piece of birch bark and handed it to her. Sew this up in a piece of cloth. Make him wear it around his neck. She took the birch bark and threw it at her feet without even looking at it. Was written on it. I won't do that. That's an incantation for him to recover quickly. I won't take this from you. I'm too scared. The mother lifted the sleeping child in her arms and pressed him to her chest. Gently rocking him, she spoke to Siren, and her voice was full of venom, a sharp contrast to her tenderness for her son. If you did something bad to him, the gods would punish you, witch. Siren responded to her words with an indifferent look, wiping some spilled potion off her hand with a rag. So be it. The woman went out the back door. Well, if you want your kid to die, sure, don't give him medicine. Oh, Jesus. Siren put the rag down and walked over to the table, which was left in a mess. She was turned with her back to the door, so Lotta couldn't see her expression. Tense after what she saw, she watched as Siren tied bunches of herbs, removed scattered coal, sulfur, put a dried bat wing and some snake heads on a plate. Without turning around, Siren said, Well, come on in, then. Don't just stand there. Caught red-handed, Lotta took a step back. I didn't want to bother her. Enter. Lotta opened the door all the way, and no longer hiding, boldly entered the room. I heard the screaming. I decided to see what was going on. I'm sorry if I disturbed you. It's all right. There were herbs, roots, potions everywhere. Hair, skin, snakes, mole paws, hearts, hedgehog spines, bat wings, heads, skins. There was everything. But there were even more candles in that room. Wherever Lotta looked, there were a few of them scattered around. Lotta looked at the table where the boy had been writhing a few moments before. What happened to him? He ran into the forest, got lost there, drank from a swamp. He almost died. Have you cured him? I did everything I could. He should take my decoction regularly. Siren didn't look up, diligently putting things back in their places. Both women were embarrassed by what had happened, waiting for the question hanging in the air to find its answer. Lotta made up her mind and asked cautiously, Do they always treat you like that? Siren looked at her. She knew Lotta would ask something like that, but the way she did it surprised her. Lotta's question was not driven by idle curiosity. On the contrary, it filled with sympathy and understanding. Lotta didn't ask why they treated her like that, or what Siren did to deserve it. It was as if she had immediately taken Siren's side. For some reason, it was hard for Siren to answer. Her tongue moved reluctantly as she managed to say, People are ungrateful. They're blinded by fear. Then why are you helping them? Wouldn't you? If an animal bites me, I will still treat it kindly no matter what. It simply doesn't understand. But people, they're no different. Treat them like animals, and you will come to love the whole world. Nope. I'm good on that. I'm afraid my heart isn't that big. You can measure someone else's heart, but not your own. Siren sounded detached, even cold, but Lana realized it wasn't about her. Siren was used to living as a hermit with Volet, rarely speaking with people. Lotta knew firsthand that what it meant to feel that you do not belong to the community. Siren finished cleaning and turned her attention back to Lana. Why are you here? I was skinning a hair to get used to seeing blood. So, you're going to be a priestess? I guess so. Lana noticed that Siren was looking at the candles as if counting and checking that all were lit. Can I learn from you too? If Siren can tell by looking at a candle that a spirit is wandering next to me, then I could do it too. But her request angered Siren. Stubbornly pressing her lips together, she said, Let's get out of here. Does that mean no? It means you're sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Lotta regretted asking the careless question. She wanted to get closer to Siren, learn a new craft, befriend Siren and learn a new craft. I mean, I don't know the situation or relationship with Siren and Volet. We'll do get closer. You're interested in Siren. Siren opened the door and waited for Lotta to leave. They bumped into Vollet returning from the fog. The priest frowned as he noticed them coming out of the room together. We just get a question. "Where have you been?" Instead of answering, the priest asked, "Are you done?" Tyrion pursed her lips but replied, "Yes, everything's all right." Tyrion looked down at Vollet's shoes, and Lana did the same. They were wet, with lumps of dirt sticking to them. Where did he go? What was he looking for? It was clear that Tyrion's expression, that she was thinking the same thing, but she didn't say anything and went back to her room. Lana was watching her thoughtfully when the priest's chilling voice rang out. "You still here?" "I skinned the hair, just like you asked." "I saw. Good job." Something in her heart leaped with joy, but Lana suppressed that feeling. She didn't want to admit the priest's approval made her so happy. "That's not enough. I have to find out what Vollet is hiding." "Teach me." Vollet looked at her warily and even condescendingly. It was as if he realized what she was up to, and her attempts were futile and pathetic. "All right." Without saying a word, he put the skull on his head and went towards the door. "Where are we going?" "You want to learn, you'll be following." The priest led her to the chicken coop, picked the largest rooster, and headed to the forest. All the way there, Lotta silently tried to keep up with his long stride. When they arrived, they were greeted by the old priest. "Will the young priestess join us today?" Lotta looked at Vollet questioningly. "Yes, she's going to help us." Both priests fell on their knees before the idols and bowed their heads, whispering prayers. They appealed to the gods, lifting all the despair of mankind from the bottom of their souls. Their low, hoarse voices sounded rough, melodic at the same time. Lotta also fell to her knees, obeying a silent, omnipresent force. Standing, towering over someone much more important would have been blasphemy. The young priest stopped praying, but the old one kept going. Vollet took the rooster out of the bag, roughly squeezed its neck so that it wouldn't escape, and handed it to Lana. "Kill it." "Anything but this." Vollet shook his head. He wasn't going to waste time arguing. He slashed the rooster's throat with a knife, leaving a trail of blood, and laid it at the foot of Perun. It seemed that the bird didn't even realize that it was in pain and dying. Vollet turned his head slightly towards Lotta and said firmly in a tone that would accept no complaint, "Repeat after us." The priests touched their foreheads, and Lotta did the same. Her hand moved to the left shoulder, then right shoulder, and then to her navel. They drew the rune of power on this rune of Willow on their bodies, as if protecting themselves. With this gesture, they ended their conversation with the gods. Meanwhile, the blood spread over the stone, nourishing the soil, and when the earth absorbed it completely, the sun appeared from behind the intertwined branches. It sparkled, unexpectedly bright, warm, even for spring. Vollet stood at the sacrificial stone, his face almost completely hidden behind the skull remained impenetrable. Yellow reflections danced on the mast, highlighting his severe features and creating an ominous halo. The old priest also remained motionless. The three of them stood looking at the sun caressing the tops of the trees, but for a moment it passed, and the bad weather swallowed the celestial body once again, back into the abyss of darkness. The rays faded, and the fog covered the light again. The old priest took off the skull and approached Lotta with a faint smile on his lips. "Frightened eyes, don't be afraid. Rejoice. People are afraid of us, but they don't need to be. An interesting path lies before you." "Thank you." Lotta felt inspired. The old priest supported her. "Come on." Vollet walked past her without waiting and disappeared behind the trees. Run. Next to him, no evil spirits will harm you. Next to Volod. I'm not afraid of evil spirits, but of him. But besides fear, she felt... something more. Lotta smiled at the old priest and hurried after Volod. You don't realize it yet, but Volod excites you. I guess. The priest had finished lighting some logs, and now a small fire was warming them. Its flames danced in the forest twilight, dispelling the shadows and drawing patterns on their faces. Without looking a lot, Volod spoke calmly, slowly, about the meaning of each gesture and the symbolism of fire and sacrificial meat, putting the carcass of the hare on an improvised spit. You eat meat, knowing that it was killed for you. The gods need blood. We offer sacrifices and get glimpses of their power. Someone's death brings about something good. If you're afraid to get blood on your hands, then you are afraid of the gods' blessing. Lotta was fascinated, despite herself, by his words, confidence, and strength. She watched his every move, feeling her heart skip a beat in the mixture of fear and admiration. The priest's attention never wavered from his duty. His expression remained cold, distant, but it was detachment, that indifference to the world around him, that attached her to some strange way. She found herself yearning for his attention, for his eyes to meet. He slowly turned the spit. The heat from the fire warmed his hands, weathered and roughed by the endless rituals. The meat was giving off an appetizing scent that mixed with the smoke, filling the air with an aromatic smell. Volod's every move was precise and deliberate. He was closely watching the meat change its color. There was no doubt in his eyes, reflecting the flames, but Lotta didn't know the reason. When the meat was cooked, the priest looked up, and his gaze lingered on Lotta's face for a moment. Lotta felt a shiver run through her. She was both scared and fascinated by those piercing eyes. Today you saw the power of the gods firsthand. You saw the price we have to pay. Once a month we perform special rituals where we have to sacrifice larger animals. Can you handle seeing a river of blood? It's not about the sacrifices. You walk in the haze. Is that what you want? To go there? She heard a suspicious note in his voice. I want answers. Then you should go to Ozar, not me. Lotta looked down. But the dream was about you. Volod handed her the cooked meat. She thanked him, took a few pieces. She felt the priest's gaze and sensed his suspicions. But at the same time, she felt strangely calm. She knew that she was safe with him. Something in her heart told her the priest was willing to risk himself to protect her. Or maybe she was just a foolish woman, and it was wishful thinking. Soon, Lotta said goodbye to Volod and went to see Tata. She really didn't want to go home. Lotta knocked, but no one answered. She decided to peer in through the window, but couldn't see anything through the thick linen fabric. Where's Tata? Lotta decided to wait for her and sat down on the front steps. A feeling of helplessness was swelling inside of her. She wasn't sure that becoming a priestess would help her find answers to her questions, but what else could she do? Tata's right. The mystery of Vereya's death will remain unsolved. All important things are done by the priest, but they won't share their secrets. So I have two options: to continue living my life and stay in the dark, and remain a sheep walking along the road paved by the shepherds, or to become a shepherd in the human world, a priestess, and lead the flock. Knowing the way ahead, knowing the secrets, answering the questions, not asking them. Lotta put her head in her hands. Her excitement ended as quickly as it started. But how long will it take before they let me in on their secret? How long will I have to kill animals and watch life drain from their bodies? Or is there hope, nothing but cruelty and hope behind that aura of mystery? What if the priests are the same scared sheep walking ahead, but still looking for a shepherd who will bring them home? Lotta remembered Ozar's offer. You'll spend the night with me. Maybe Volet is right, and only Ozar can give me what I need. He could ask the gods. Path of the Haze. Lotta frowned, feeling the futility of her hopes. The gods. Everyone relies on them so much, but the gods could use some help themselves. They're dead, or almost dead, and they take so long dying. Why would they help the living? With the price of the Magus is asking. Spend the night with him? Does he lack women's attention? No, I don't think he's lacking that. Lotta felt the anger that had not subsided since her encounter with the Magus rise again inside of her. Ozar is sure that I will have to accept his offer. She got up, accepted the fact that Tata wouldn't return. I will go to Milan. I need his advice. She walked down the familiar path leading to her friend's house. She knocked, and the door creaked open. Milan's parents weren't home. They were probably still busy trading and weren't back yet. Milan, can I come in? She was met with silence. Where is everyone? Call out, leave. Call out. Milan. She peered into the darkness of the room and noticed a figure running out the back door. Lotta became anxious. She decided to walk in and check if Milan was all right. Lotta noticed a female silhouette quickly disappearing into the yard. Milan got out of bed, embarrassment and scarlet with shame. I swear if it was Tata. His tousled hair was sticking out from his head, and his eyes were scared and ashamed. Lotta was no less embarrassed. Sorry, I'm leaving. She didn't finish the sentence and hurried to leave, but Milan jumped out of bed and grabbed her hand. Wait, please wait. It looks like I came at a bad time. You scared me. I thought it was my parents. Lotta wanted to say something but realized that she didn't know what exactly. Any question or comment seemed horribly inappropriate right then. Was he with a woman? I mean, she ran out the back door, so probably. She felt like an inexperienced child, looking behind the curtain of another world that she had yet to enter. Sit down. Don't just stand there. Milan began frantically searching for the rest of his clothes, patting the furniture in the semi-darkness. Are you all right? Even though he's standing in front of us, fully clothed. Something about his nervous movements and wandering gaze told her that Milan wasn't upset only because of her unexpected visit. Admitting defeat, he sat down on the wooden chair, his shoulders hunched, and looked at her. Everything comes at a price, right? His words troubled her. Volet had said something similar just earlier, and now Milan. Is this a sign? It is the will of the gods. I guess that's the sign. Yep, no, you can leave now. Isn't that what they teach us? Why are you asking me this? He sighed and looked out the window. Is your heart still heavy? Lotta took a moment to reply, listening to her own breathing. It was steady and confident. Yet, yes, there was still sadness sewn into her chest, pulling her shoulders down, but the pain had dulled. She had the strength to carry the burden until it lessened and faded away, leaving behind a small scar that would only bother her during bad weather. Thinking that her silence was the answer, he continued. Do you remember how we loved to play by the river? Of course I remember. Do you often think about Vereya? Constantly. Vereya loved you very much. Lotta looked out the window. She did. Blinded. Vereya had managed to convince her sister to join the group. Lotta knew everyone by sight, but some names had gotten lost in the labyrinth of her memory. She was mostly silent and spoke only to Milan and Vereya. "Want to try some?" Milan handed her a mug of home-brewed beer. "It's bitter, but it makes your head feel light." "The main thing is not to overdo it. Then it will be exactly the opposite. The beer will seem sweeter than honey, and your head will feel heavier than a stone." Thank you." Lotta had never tried alcohol before. After taking a sip, she started coughing to Milan and Vereya's laughter. "Not so fast." "Do you like it?" "I don't know." "You look tipsy already, from a sip." Milan burst out laughing, good-naturedly patting her on the shoulder. Milla leaned against the table. Her face was flushed, but she still looked lovely and fresh. "Lotta, will you really be joining us?" "I won't be staying long." Lotta replied colder than she should have, sensing that their conversation wouldn't go well. "Come to beckons." Here we go again. Come to what now? It's a very long, complicated word that I'd never seen before. Lotta had long stopped attending such gatherings. She found them boring. Everything she tried to do never turned out quite right. She heard she had no talents. "That's all right. We don't just spin and embroider there. We also tell folk tales and stories and sing songs. Are you busy with the shepherding until late?" Mila looked at her so kindly that Lotta felt ashamed of the resentment she felt towards her. What a hypocrite. "That's right. It takes a long time. Do you put the sheep to sleep?" Layla's voice was gentle, friendly, but that didn't make her words any more pleasant. "Silly. They don't need to be tucked in." She meant it as a joke, Lotta. "Tell me, do you tend the sheep in those clothes?" "That's why it smells in here." The girls laughed. Vereya sprang to her feet in a sudden anger, anticipating her sister's reaction, and hit the table with her weak, delicate hand. "Stop it. Don't you dare treat her like this." "Vereya, we didn't mean any harm. Why are you getting so angry?" Vereya was so on friendly terms with everyone. Surely those girls considered her a good friend. And yet she put them in her place, quickly, harshly. The meek, humble Milan didn't hold back either. He slowly got up from his seat and said, slightly stumbling over his words, "Your words are full of venom. A kind person shouldn't say that sort of thing." Mila smiled. Layla grimaced, not hiding her disdain for him. Before the argument got worse, Lotta stepped over the bench, about to leave. "Where are you going?" What should I do? Speak up for yourself more harshly? Speak up for yourself more softly? Oh. I'm gonna go with speak up for yourself more softly. I'm going home. So soon? Did we scare you? We can fight if you want, but I won't, and I don't want to waste my time. I'm not interested in that. Do you think you're better than us? Yes, I think everyone's better than you. A pile of poop is better than you. Lotta didn't say anything, and they seemed to infuriate them, but Vereya shushed her and hurried after her sister. Lotta. I'm fine, really. I'm so sorry. They were so awful to you. It was the beer, honestly. They're not as bad as they want to seem. They can behave as they please, I don't care. But thanks for standing up for me. Let me come with you. No need. They hugged, and Lotta hurried to return to her familiar world. But Vereya must have asked Dragan to accompany her as he caught up to her a few minutes later. "You're leaving already?" He wasn't looking at her, but staring grumpily at the horizon. "Feel free to tell Vereya that you walked me home, but I prefer to be alone." "And if you don't make it there, what should I say?" "What could happen to me?" He stopped, grabbed her arm abruptly. He lifted it slowly, forcing her to stand on tiptoe. "What are you doing?" "Many people get drunk out of fear, boredom, and end up wandering the streets. What if you met a drunkard? What if he decides to bother you?" Lotta jerked her arm free. "You're that drunkard right now." "Don't worry, it'd be the last person I'd want to bother." "I know how much you dislike me. I feel safer without you. You only attract attention with your screams." She was upset, and she wanted to say some nasty things to him, but all she could muster was, "And you reek of mead." Without waiting for a response, she strode off, and he didn't try to catch up to her. Lotta shook her head, chasing away her obsessive memory. "You haven't spoken to various friends since." "Neither have you." "I never liked them." And then Vereya started spending more and more time with Tata. "I thought she was the same, but she turned out to actually be nice." Milan shook his head and jumped to his feet and sat down next to her. "You know..." He fell silent. His voice sounded strangled, as if he was holding back tears. "Are you upset about something?" Milan suddenly hugged her. Taken aback, Lotta could only look at the top of his head, pressed against her chest. "I believe you'll find out soon enough. You'll find out what happened to Vereya, and it will be easier for you to let her go. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Milan misses her too. He's always been so sensitive. "I don't know, the way he just spoke, I'm kind of sussing him." Lotta patted his head awkwardly. There's something up, just sussy." "I'm sure I will." Milan let her go, sat away again, embarrassed about his behavior. They talked for a long time, recalling the past, but avoided talking about the future. "My mother said that you had an argument with Dragan. What happened between the two of you?" Milan had just calmed down, but at those words he became anxious again. "That's not true." He blurted it out, surprisingly desperate voice. That's not true." Milan pushed back the curtain and looked out the window. "He's afraid to look me in the eye. My parents will be here soon. Won't your father worry? And now he's kicking me out. What's the matter with him?" Lotta decided to deal with it later and headed for the door. In the end, I never asked him about the most important thing. What should I do? Let Ozar push me around so that he can ask the gods for help? "Milan." "Yeah?" "Would you do anything for a loved one?" A shadow crossed his face. "Anything." "Thank you." Lotta left Milan's house with an even longer list of questions in her head. She returned home and went to bed, but couldn't fall asleep. Milan had encountered her, or encouraged her to consider Ozar's offer again, and now she was tossing and turning, feeling that she was on the verge of some kind of reckless decision. The Magus is the type who does whatever he wants. He will reveal secrets to me faster than Volet or the priestess. But what does his offer to spend the night with him mean? She swung her legs off the bed, touching the floor with her bare feet. If I don't go, I won't find out. Go to Ozar? Stay home. Go to Ozar. Lotta dressed quickly, went quietly down the stairs so that her parents wouldn't wake up and find out about her midnight escape. Approaching the Magus's house, Lotta became nervous. Why am I doing this? This isn't like me. She stopped, took a deep breath, trying to calm down. I can always leave. It was dangerous to be out at this hour, but it was even more reckless to visit the Ozar when he might be resting. What if he's not alone? But something told her that the Magus wouldn't mind her nighttime visit. On the contrary, he knew that she would come. Lotta entered quietly. She stopped at the closed curtain, listening to the silence of the house. Her heart was pounding in her chest, responding to her agitation. He was there behind the curtain. She could almost feel his presence. Should I leave before he finds out that I was here? How much longer are you going to stand there? Lotta drew back the curtain. She tried to ignore the trembling of her hands. First of all, Lotta looked around the room to make sure that Ozar was alone. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw that he was lying sprawled on the pillows, looking at her. But she still didn't dare to look back at him. I've been waiting for you. I see. You dressed up so nicely, and now you're embarrassed. Oh, I shouldn't have tried so hard. Take a seat. I don't bite. Would you like some wine? At first, Lotta wanted to refuse, but she decided that a drink would calm her nerves and nodded timidly. She heard the splash of poured drink. Thick drops hit the bottom of the mug with a soft tinkling. Here you go. Without looking up, she took the mug from his hands and drank a small sip. The wine was a sweet, but had a bitter aftertaste. Do you like it? What is it? Apple wine. Ozar turned his mug in his hands, looking inside. The apples were cut into pieces, then put in a wooden barrel and carefully crushed to extract the juice. The juice was left to ferment for a while and then filtered. The process was repeated a few times, so that you and I could enjoy it after a little while. So that your sweet face would heat up, and the fear would disappear from your eyes. Ozar was in no hurry to do anything, and Lotta didn't know what to say or what to ask. All she could hear was her heartbeat. I've forgotten why I came here. What did I expect from this meeting? Look at me. Lotta froze. Her chest tightened with anxiety. His request was so unexpected that her breath caught in her throat. At last, she forced herself to look up. You worry too much. Please don't be afraid of me. I'm glad you came. Lotta licked her suddenly dry lips, which didn't escape him. You said you'd help me if you spend the night with me. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Is that what you came here for? His face was closer now, his eyes studying her greedily. She forced herself to sit still. Lotta licked her lips nervously again, and only then noticed the Ozar's eyes dropped to her mouth when she did that. She resolved that she would never do that in front of him again. I'm here to fulfill my part of the deal. He smiled as if he'd been waiting for that answer and leaned back again. So, you will stay with me all night? Ozar was stating that rather than asking. He knew that Lotta wouldn't leave, that having made up her mind, she wouldn't run away. What are we going to do? She restrained herself with from biting her lip. Her question suddenly seemed naive to her and also encouraged the Magus to act. But the Ozar's answer was surprisingly short. Whatever you want. Shall we go to the gods so that you can ask them what happened to my sister? At night. I'm afraid that's not a good idea. If you have no other thoughts, let me take matters into my own hands. He rose from his seat. Lana jumped to her feet. What do you have in mind? I would like to ask you the same question. The Magus slowly moved around the room, not taking his eyes off of her. He was like a hunting wildcat, preparing to pounce. Why are you so scared of me? Why are you so reserved, so unapproachable? He said the last word with a special pleasure. Yes, I'm scared of you. She decided to confess and suddenly felt confident. I'm a regular woman and you're a man, a Magus. I won't have the strength to fight you back. You're stronger, you see into the future, you have the favor of the gods. Why would you need to fight back? I'm not going to try and take something from you that you wouldn't want to give me willingly. Can I trust your words? You can trust these words. It looked like the Ozar had grown wary of playing games, as he suddenly broke eye contact with Lana and walked past her. Despite feeling relieved, she also felt a painful, inexplicable disappointment. We're going to do something now. Lana didn't see his face, but his back. He slowly was moving elbows. He was doing something. Once again, she found herself filled with fear, distrust towards him. What does he have in mind? We're gonna play Jenga. I'm serious. She decided that she wouldn't let anything bad happen, and that she would find the strength to defend herself if she had to. Those thoughts comforted her. Her innocent eyes, filled with fear, curiosity, followed his hands. Finally, Ozar turned back to her. His room was dimly lit by a few flickering candles. He stood in the darkness, and only his mocking lips were illuminated by a sliver of light. He had a small bowl with honey and herbs in his hands. Ozar met her eyes with a warm smile. Don't be afraid. His voice was deep and soothing. This ritual will bind our souls for the night. What for? She involuntarily lowered her voice to a whisper. She had no courage left to resist his charm. Maybe then I'll be able to see your future. And the gods will heed my call more willingly. Alright. Lana wasn't afraid of rituals. She felt relieved, and now she was eagerly awaiting instructions. Ozar hesitated, noticing her enthusiasm. He smiled wryly, and then bitterness of his grin turned into anticipation. Lana grew suspicious. What do we have to do? You'll see. He took a step forward, the candle fully lit up his face. Don't move. The Magus scooped some of the honey. It slowly ran down his index and middle fingers, coating them. He put them to her mouth and ran them over her upper and lower lips, almost caressing her. Lana didn't move, struck by Ozar's attentive gaze. He was staring right into her eyes. She wanted to know what he was thinking at that moment. Was his heart pounding as fast as hers? Then he looked at her lips. What's next? Ozar returned his gaze to her eyes, slowly, as if reluctantly. Now it's your turn. He handed the bowl of honey to her. Lana dipped her fingers into the viscous liquid. Should I... Ozar was waiting. She pressed her fingers to his lips. Her heart fluttered. She felt an aching pull in her lower belly. Lana didn't know Min's lips were so soft. Ozar smiled, and she felt his lips moving under her fingers. Sorry. Lana hastily spread the honey and took a step back. Now eat this. He handed her a spikelet. She couldn't recognize the plant. She was so nervous that she didn't ask and followed the Magus's gentle order. Ozar repeated after her. And now. He brought his face close to hers. Lotta was afraid he was going to kiss her, but for some reason she didn't step back. But Ozar didn't do what she was expecting and only whispered in her ear, "You're part of my world now, maiden. You will learn the secrets that are hidden from others. I promise you." You've become much closer tonight. His words were like a spell, waving around her mind, filling her with awe and anticipation. Lotta knew that she would never forget that night, that ritual, that man who was a hunter, a magus, and her mentor. He smelled of honey and herbs, of addiction, temptation. When Lotta opened her eyes, Ozar was standing at the window. "We still have time. You can rest now." "What are you going to do?" "Wait for your future to find me." Lotta lay down on the pillows, strewn all over the floor. They were soft, comfortable, more comfortable than her bed. This is so bizarre. She watched him, who seemed lost in thought. Exhausted by the anxiety, her body involuntarily relaxed, and soon she fell into a maze of dreams. The last thing she saw was the profile of the Magus staring thoughtfully at the horizon. Lotta opened her eyes. Her heart immediately sped up. She remembered where she was, and she was shocked at her carelessness. Ozar was sitting in a seat, looking at her. It seemed as though he'd been watching her for a long time. He'd been guarding her sleep, examining her face, striped of all masks. "Good morning, maiden." "How long have I been asleep?"
It will be dawn soon."
"Already?"
She pursed her lips in annoyance. "You were so afraid of this night, but it flew by, right? I'll walk you home. It's better if no one finds out that you have come to see me."
Lotta had not yet recovered from the ritual and her dreamless sleep, so she silently followed the Magus. They walked to her house in complete silence. Lotta was ashamed and embarrassed, but she didn't understand why. She was also nervous. She gave him a few intense but quick glances. When she did it again, Ozar suddenly looked at her, making it clear that he knew she was watching him.
"Don't worry, we didn't do anything wrong. On the next night, I will see your future."
Lotta couldn't help smiling. "I'll be looking forward to that." Ozar stopped at the door and looked at the second-floor window. "Sleep well. After all, I hope that my future will be good."
"See you soon, Lotta."
Lotta didn't go inside right away. She watched his figure slowly disappear into the fog. Lotta suddenly felt proud that the Magus himself had walked her home and that he'd spent his precious time on her. The unreachable, elusive Magus. She immediately suppressed that feeling. It was so strange, a strange ritual. How many women have gone through with that with him? She felt uneasy. She turned around and hurried to her room.
How many women kissed him? How many women did many things with a guy?
Lotta awoke with a gentle touch. She opened her eyes, and it took a moment to realize that her mother's worried but bright face was hovering over her. "Mother? Come quick. The nightmare is over." "What are you talking about?" "The murder. The brute revealed himself. It wasn't the Haze that killed Vereya, Lotta. I knew it. This can't be. He confessed everything. He couldn't carry the burden. But how? He says it was poison. Who did it? Her mother's face twisted in pain. Come on, you'll see for yourself. Lana pulled off her nightgown and hurried to put on yesterday's outfit that she'd thrown on the chest. She had a bad feeling, but she didn't yet know how right she was. Haze. The whole village had gathered near the wall of fog. Lotta ran towards them, but began to slow down when she saw that all the heads had turned in her direction. Something is wrong. Something is very wrong. The crowd parted, and she saw her sister's killer. His hands were tied. A trickle of blood was streaming from a deep cut over his brow. Someone must have already thrown a stone at him. The killer looked up at her apologetically. I'm sorry. Okay. I give you 4 on that one. We have 1 haze, 2 reality, 1 tie, 1 determination, 2 compassion. So quite a scattered amount of stats. Alright, so without further ado, thank you all for watching. Please remember that if you did enjoy the content, to like, share, and subscribe. Also, head down to the comment section, let me know your thoughts. Aside from that, quite an interesting chapter. It's about the best way to put it. Quite an interesting one. Gotta say, I love this whole app because the length and quality of writing, as well as everything else, really. The visuals and the whole 9 yards. I love it. I really do love it. It's about the gist of it. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Yeah, you know what to do. More content coming. Peace out.